Welcome to I5. We're going to do something a bit different this time. We're going to do a bunch of smaller episodes. We will do a long video that connects all of them. That way someone who wants to listen to it all the way through can. But we're also going to divide it into smaller chunks in order to release smaller videos. We'll probably release one a day. This is the first episode being recorded. I'm Jonathan of I5 and I'm here with my co-host Jim. How you doing, Jim?
Hello. Yeah, doing all right.
And today we're going to weigh in on the French riots, which seem to have died down. But we wanted to collect all the data that came out about them before we commented on them, because, quite frankly, while on the surface you can simply analyse them, there's a lot of depth to the French riots and the reasons behind it. So we thought we'd do specialised little episodes dedicated to it. The first one, we're going to discuss the short-term causes of the riot. It's been quite a time in France, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, it's been a very revolutionary age, someone would say.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's been quite hectic. It's kind of similar with what happened when in America, a time when they sort of, invaded, quote unquote, the capital, and with all the riots. And I mean, you still have riots here and there, but yeah, it kind of reminds me of the Purge in a sense, except the police is involved, and it doesn't discriminate with innocent and guilty. It's should first ask questions later.
I mean, we were actually going to cover the actual White House riots as well, because to be honest, sometimes the truth does stare you in the face. It's a video for another day, but that took a Carlson footage of the White House riots. That was revealing, because we always suspected something was off about it, but that's a video for a different day. But it's something we'll cover if you're interested, at least anyway, because I think that might be a good one.
Yeah, can see why not. And it's a good example between what the narrative is and what the truth is.
Yeah, because like I said, I was certainly questioning it at the time. It's just you were called a conspiracy nut. But going into the short-term cause of what's happened this time in France, it's yet another incident with the police to a member of an ethnic minority. 17-year-old of Algerian descent, Nahul Mazouk, was shot in the chest by French police during a traffic stop in the suburb of Nanterre. They stopped him, according to reports, after following Mozuku was speeding in a bus lane and only stopped after being blocked by stationary traffic. The police are claiming that Mozuku was driving towards them, and they were in fear for their lives because of it, and they fired with justification, again, that their lives were threatened. In contrast, bystanders who captured the incident on their mobiles and provided mobile phone footage said they believed Mozuku was driving away in fear. The footage did actually come out, from what Jim and I could see, because we've both looked at it. Both officers are at the side of the both officers are at the side of the car, and the police officer who discharges their firearm is on the driver's side of the car, shooting into the actual side window. They're not at the front of it, and it was at point blank range, again through the driver's side window, with the second officer standing right next to him. We will play the footage now, but just a warning, we're not showing the footage of this person getting shot. This is a very sensitive topic. Even if our video stood a chance of getting monetized, this video wouldn't because of what we're discussing. So we're not going to cross that line and show any footage of this kid getting shot.
When 17-year-old Niall started to drive away during a police traffic check, it cost him his life. An eyewitness filmed the police performing the check, one pointing a gun at the driver. When Niall began to leave, the officer fired, killing the teenager.
I'll post that footage now. I mean, just looking at the actual footage and looking at a still image of the actual police officer's body positioning, I don't think I agree with the police narrative.
No, doesn't look like it. Unless this is the aftermath of the chase, in which the murder has already occurred and they're just taking the car. But I don't think that's the case, is it?
No, the footage has got out there of when they stop the kid and they're talking to him, and then he drives to try and get away from them, and then they just start firing point blank into him from that actual position.
Yeah, well, in that case,
I mean, I certainly can't see any. I wasn't there, so I don't know what was said, but it's not a good look for the police, and it's the fact they've lied, saying.
Yeah, it never is good when the police has to actually shoot people and kill them. I mean, we are against murder. Let's get that out of the way.
Yeah.
But in this case, yeah, it certainly doesn't look good because, as you said, they presented a false narrative.
I can see grounds for it objectively if they thought he was a danger to the road, but it's the fact that they started off with we felt our lives were threatened. their lives, not other drivers. I've not actually heard the police say they felt he was a danger to other drivers on the road after the initial stop.
The only thing I can think of is that maybe he may have done some suspicious move. Now I'm trying to play the devil's advocate here, but maybe he tried to do a suspicious move, indicating that he's carrying a gun or something, which is why the police ended up shooting him. But that's a speculation from my part. I have no information whatsoever. It's only that clip we've seen. And as you said, I wasn't there, so I can only speculate.
Yeah, and to be honest, I have a feeling if he was armed, it would have been in the news straight away. The police would have really latched onto that.
Yeah, true. Very true.
And this follows on. We'll go into this in a further episode in the series. This follows on from 13 other killings, most of which were people of ethnic origins, some of them Algerian, who were killed at similar traffic stops by the police. So it's following on from a chain of these incidents. Either way, looking at the pictures, I don't think the police have a leg to stand on with their conduct here.
No, doesn't seem to be. Don't seem to have anything to stand on, really. But at the end of the day, what happened.
It did.
And also, if it was on self-defense, I don't think they would. What's the word? They did punish the police officer who shot the kid,
They
right?
have. They've started an investigation. So the police officer in the suburb was handed a preliminary voluntary homicide charge. The prosecutor, Pascal Prache, involved has said the conditions for the legal use of the weapons were not met. A preliminary charge is when a judge believes that there has been wrongdoing, but more investigation is needed in order to send the case to trial. The prosecutor has also said the police officer involved has been placed in a provisional detention centre. So it looks like an initial investigation has been set up, but nothing concrete has happened yet. I think it was probably it was a patch job to say that we're at least doing something to try and appease the riot.
Well, if that's the case, that means that it wasn't self-defense.
Yeah, because like I said, the judge has already said that he thinks there's been wrongdoing, and the prosecutor himself is pushing that for proving the conditions for the legal use of the weapons were not met. So yeah, it's pretty much that is an indicator as well that the law's not on this police officer's side. It's just the fact it's not a concrete case yet, it's just being investigated. But on the other hand, these things do take time. I mean, they had to launch some kind of investigation anyway by default in order to appease the protesters who have escalated to violence. Not that violence is not that I agree with the rioters either. But beyond that, I don't really have too much to say on that one. I do know it's a reflection of a systemic problem with the police. It's just we're going to cover that in a later episode. This episode is focusing mainly on the short-term cause or the incident that sparked it, which was this incident. We know there are other causes and there are more long-term ones, such as the previous 13 traffic stop police killings that we mentioned earlier, but we'll be focusing on that, like I said, in later episodes. A quick comparison, because to move on to the riot itself, just a quick comparison to the 2005 riots. The original 2005 riots had a similar cause. It was the death of 2 individuals who hid in an electrical substation and died from electrocution during a blackout. They were part of a group who broke in to said substation and hid to avoid police interrogation. That's what sparked the 2005 ones. Again, issues like youth unemployment, systemic brutality of the police, that type of thing were associated with it. Youth fear of the police, that kind of thing. It's similar for the 2023 riots. Again, we will go into more detail about that. The only difference between one difference between this one is the 2005 Sarkozy announced a state of emergency on the 8th of November. There's no state of emergency from Macron. That's also something we'll be going into later on in the series as to why. But more what we're concerned with right now is the immediate effects of the actual riots. So some hard stats. So in 2005, 8,000 vehicles were destroyed. So far, as of time of recording, 5,662 vehicles have been burned. In 2023, in 2005, 126 police officers and firefighters were injured. 2023, 808 police have been injured. Here's where the big differences are. 200 million euros of damage from 2005, 1.1 billion pounds worth of damage from 2023 riots.
Don't forget though, there's also the inflation as well in the middle.
There is.
the same amount of damage would cost maybe double now.
Maybe, but
But yeah,
that's something else.
it's a big difference.
Oh yeah, here are some really hardcore stats. So 18,000 police were deployed in 2005. This time 45,000 police are deployed, as well as APCs like the Bearcat and the Burley-Out VXB 170. 2,760 arrests were made 2005. 3,300 arrests were made this time, with the average age being 17. These are just what's out now. And add to that, this time as well, it's the amount of buildings being destroyed. 500 public buildings have been destroyed in 2023, and thousands of private buildings have been destroyed. Add to that, another one is a politician, the assassination attempt on the actual French mayor, which we'll go into detail a bit later on. But those are just some initial stats. I mean, you've seen footage as well. I think you found the footage of them throwing cars off buildings.
Yeah, that was like it was like a scene out of an action movie. Literally, they were throwing cars out of parking lot buildings from like the third and the fourth floor. Insane stuff.
Yeah,
Crazy.
Yeah, it's the destruction. Additionally, as I said before, there's been looting. I've also mentioned what's being called an assassination attempt on the mayor. Specifically, a car was driven at his house while he wasn't home. His wife and child ran from the house. The mayor's wife broke her leg in the process of trying to escape with the child. This is his actual statement on it. This is taken straight from an article, so there might be a few grammatical errors here. Something may have gone wrong with the translation. Individuals rammed their car upon my residence before setting fire to it to burn my house, inside which my wife and 2 children slept. While trying to protect the children and escape the attackers, my wife and one of my children were injured, he said, adding that he had, quoting again, no words strong enough to describe his emotions towards the horror of this night. So things have leveled up quite a bit. I mean, attacking a politician...
Yeah, also the language he used, he didn't try to target or blame any particular group or anyone specifically. He said generically that he's pissed off and he cannot describe what he's gone through, which, yeah, I guess it's fair up to a point, but yeah, I just feel it's diplomatic.
Yeah, I think it might be the right call in this situation, is something we'll get into later on in the series as well. This is evidence of race being a very sensitive subject in France. They're very reluctant to talk about it. And he might be a bit reluctant because of that, to target, to basically say any kind of group that would cause this or blame, the ghettos for this. I don't know who it was. But I think I think a lot of fringe groups have joined this as well. And this is why the riots are not the solution to this. Attacking politicians, Macron can't ignore that. I think the rioters were lucky this time that Macron was thinking about his international image and didn't deploy the army or the French Home Guard once that one happened, because that was quite an escalation. There was no way he was going to do that because he was concerned about his international image, but I'm just saying, when you start attacking politicians and local officials, that's really when it escalates.
Yeah,
I mean, people were already calling it a civil war, but international commentators had a narrative, which we'll also go into. I mean, there's the incident with the incident with the cars getting dropped off the buildings as well. When you found that footage, we'll post it here if we haven't already posted it. Did you see them exploding on impact?
I can't remember if they were actually exploding on impact, but that would be weird.
I'm sure they were. I might be wrong, though.
That's the one. Oh, you're absolutely right. As soon as they fall, they explode, which is...
Have you heard the explosion?
Yeah.
And looking at it still...
I can't... Oh, you know what? I just realized watching this, if you pause, there is already fire. The car's already on fire at the bottom.
Yeah.
So, okay, that makes more sense.
I can't verify this one, but I think if you look at the one one of the ones I've just posted, I'll see if I've got it. I'll try and find it, but I'm sure I found one where a zebra or something got onto the road and was running on the road, because apparently people were claiming that the rioters had got into a zoo and freed the animals. I can't verify that it's in France that happened, though, or if someone was just claiming that. But there's been all kinds. But I think particularly the dropping I mean, that is just dangerous, dropping cars off a building.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
fact they're exploding on impact, I mean,
It's
yeah,
crazy.
there's no excuse for that. As well as the looting. I mean, it's akin to the Portland riots, by Black Lives Matter
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
when they were burning cars and everything. My goodness.
Yep.
So going into the next part, the actual police response. Now, obviously, seeing the extreme level of violence that we've seen, because I would consider dropping cars off a building and them blowing up and rioting to be violence, because that is not protesting. Nothing justifies that behavior. You're destroying property. You're destroying buildings. That's putting people's lives in danger. The police have responded heavy-handedly, as I would expect, to be quite frank, with batons and shields. For example, near the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, hundreds of police with batons and shields stood restlessly along the Champs-Élysées. Several in front of the shuttered Cartier boutique. Posts on social media had called for protests on the Grand Boulevard, but the police presence appeared to discourage any large gatherings. I'm not fucking surprised, given the atmosphere. And also the fact they've destroyed public buildings, I'm not surprised. They moved to try and protect some of the historical ones, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, Bearcat armored cars. The Bearcat. Oh, I got it wrong in the last video, by the way. The Bearcat was the one they used to the FBI had when they arrested Rittenhouse.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're talking pretty. They've got like gun turrets on and everything. I don't think I've not seen any French ones deployed with the gun turret, but they have an option to have a gun turret on them. And also the Bearcat armored vehicles. So the response has been pretty heavy. I'll post some footage here of people capturing footage of those vehicles on the streets. Even their presence on the streets to try and keep calm. One thing that does have to be said, unless you've got something else you want to say about that.
No.
One thing I think that does have to be said is that there are fringe groups in these protests as well, or riots. Whenever you have a protest, you'll always have groups with their own interests, people who want to loot, people who have their own political agenda, who will join these protests and try and escalate them to a riot. We've already seen a few of them. There's reports that some radical Islamists, this is not all Muslims by the way, some radical Islamists have joined us and been committing some acts of violence as well. So yeah, like I said, a few fringe groups have actually joined in this.
Yeah, I'm not surprised because, as you say, this is an opportunity. In the case, there's other people that just don't believe in the actual cause of the protest, but they just want to loot. There are other people that just want to see the world burn. There might even be different political extremists involved as well. That's an opportunity to cause chaos. It's not one particular group. That's always the case with riots. When riots go out of hands, there is all sorts of people involved doing stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll try and find the footage, but there's a lot of footage of people looting. Just going into stores and taking out as much as possible, smashing in windows. And the last section of this episode, this is one I think that you were really interested in, Jim. Was this engineered, or is it simply being used as an opportunity to bring in tyrannical policy?
That's a very interesting one indeed. I'm half tempted to say that it was engineered, even though I sound as a conspiracy theorist when I say
It's not just you saying it.
Yeah, I would say maybe it's 50-50, which might be closer to the truth. There's definitely a lot of people that are marginalized and feel oppressed, and they saw an opportunity to express their discomfort, discouraging in the protest. So it was like like a time bomb, basically, that was ready to blow up, and this murder was the reason why all of this started. But at the same time, I believe there were people that would like this to happen, that have profited for it. That's what I believe, more or less. The truth may be somewhere in the middle, or it might be completely far off. But at the end of the day, even if this wasn't engineered, and this is purely down to the people, I do believe that people have gained from it. People have gained from it. Some people, not all of them, some.
Oh, very much. It's Very much so. It's not just you thinking that. I've been looking in comment sections, I've been looking at Reddit forums, I've been looking at all kinds of discussions, and some of the consistent arguments I'm actually saying. Basically, actual fact, Macron does have close ties to the World Economic Forum, and not fact, what people think. A lot of people think that this is linked to the Great Reset, and basically the neglect of integrating these ghettoed communities into French society is being taken advantage of by Macron to engineer these riots to basically destroy. Because if you look at what's happening, the looting and things, it's affecting small business as much as it is large businesses. And it's a bit off of a tangent, but during the Black Lives Matter protests in Portland, some of the some people were basically saying that the looting was targeted at small businesses, and there were suspicions, and I think there was evidence that Amazon was actually funding BLM, and people made all kind of connections that Amazon was destroying small business to try and, go to Amazon
Not only
warehouse.
that, but I would even be tempted to say that it was good for Amazon for them to destroy their warehouses, some of the warehouses. You know why?
Why?
Tax write-off.
I don't know if Amazon warehouses got targeted, but it was more to what they were saying was it was to destroy small business to drive people to basically purchase off Amazon directly.
I
It
wouldn't
was
put that.
I wouldn't put it as
Yeah.
fact. It was just a connection people were making. Whenever you have riots and you start having corporate funding,
No,
into the
I'm
groups
saying,
doing it-
I wouldn't put behind them for this to not be true.
Oh no,
So it's quite a possibility. What I'm trying
it
to say
is.
is like it's quite possible that this was the case.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I'm going to be honest here. You are always going to get these rumors when you're a private company and you start funding political groups.
Yeah,
You're basically inviting this on yourself.
I mean he's
Um,
one of the richest people in the world. You're telling me he has no connections in the different layers of the government? Come on, it's like,
Oh, I
yeah,
know.
economic power gives you political power and vice versa. That's always been the case since the beginning of time. So
Yeah, and like I said, Macron's. I mean, I get what you're saying, and I know you're not bringing the World Economic Forum into it. It's just a lot of people are bringing the World Economic Forum into it and saying this is part of the Great Reset with the destruction of infrastructure, both government buildings and private buildings. Part of this, you will own nothing and you will be happy. Which is absolutely totalitarian as hell. I personally put it down more towards neglect, 40 years of neglect by Macron and his predecessors, and I would put forward it's just really part of French culture and its melting pot conditions. And in addition, the French are a protesting nation. They always protest over everything. At one point, the government couldn't pass anything because every time they tried, there would be protests. And, just right, people should be able to protest. I wish in Britain people protested the pension age over here. Maybe it wouldn't be at 68, or maybe it wouldn't be going to 68 if they had. But when it turns to, you had pensions like you had, protests like the Yellow Jacket protest and the pension protest, but then it started, it started becoming riots when it involved politics to do with the melting pot conditions in relation to the ghettos.
yeah,
I think if there, and obviously we'll go into this a lot more, but if it's specifically this mobile phone law where he's basically allowing, the French government to spy on you for 6 months and things like that. I personally think if there is malice in it, it's more he's
well,
waited
of
for
course
it.
there is, and isn't it a bit convenient that these protests have been going for so long and the damage is so big? They
Yeah,
forced, quote unquote, to vote this law for the people's protection.
yeah. It could be as well that he didn't want to deploy a state of emergency for his international image. But yeah, if there is malice in it, I personally think that he's waited for one of these riots. Because
Well, of
I mean,
course, but the thing is, sorry to interrupt, but like
oh no, it's fine.
the emergency is something temporary.
Yeah,
This one is a lot easier. I mean,
mm.
it is being marked as being temporary, but like
It's
if you
not
do
being
it
talked about.
once, no, I mean like in the sense that it's up to 6 months.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what the law says.
Oh yeah.
So just
I
to briefly to briefly iterate,
mm,
the law is basically saying that it allows monitoring your phone in terms of like the data device where you are,
mm,
hear conversations, take videos, if they if they deem you as a person of interest, and they
mm,
can monitor you for up to 6 months. Now, the key element here is how do you define who is a person of interest, and what are the criteria for someone to be identified as a person of interest. And on the back of it, also, if you attempt to not take your phone with you or hide, cover the mic or the camera, you will be prosecuted by the law for doing so.
Well, that's 1984 level, that, because you would have, in 1984, you have the TVs that can listen to you at all times.
Funny you should mention that, because that's what the Prime Minister of France mentioned, that this is nowhere near the levels of Orwell in 1984.
I bet he did.
Ironically, it is.
Yeah, it really is, because in Orwell, if you interfered with that in 1984, if you interfered with that TV in any way or form, you got prison or worse. So I bet he's trying to distance himself from 1984. The fact that you introduce something and you have to say, it's not like 1984 though. I know what you're thinking, it's not like 1984. You know there's something wrong, which is why people are basically saying that he's linked to the World Economic Forum with this Great Reset and things. He's gonna get talked about. But just to finish the point I was making before, I think if this is intended, which it could be, he's waited for the next riot to take advantage of it and introduce this law. Governments always want to take advantage of situations to do this. Look at the amount of legislation that the British government brought in during the COVID regulations that they've not gotten rid of. So, yeah, Macron, not risking go off on a tangent. We'll end episode 1 here and go into this kind of thing later on in the series. But that was just the brief intro of the type of things we'll be talking about and just covering the riots. This is just an introduction to the series. This is the first episode, so we just gave a brief overview of the riots themselves, comparing them to past riots, and talking about some of the subject matter that we'll be talking about and the nature of them. And we'll see you in episode 2. Bye, guys.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Don't forget to hit the trinity of the like, subscribe, and share.